Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show, our Saturday edition. I love to put day in there, Jack. I don't know why.
I love that picture of the ball field, Mac.
Thank you. So here we are. We're at the Mac and Jack Sports Show. We're with you every Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. We're here to cover all your local Northeastern professional sports, New York, Boston, and Philly, along with the national sports too. You can see us live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. On Facebook, go to username @MacMan62. It'll bring you to the Mac Sports page where you can watch us live and even comment on the show. We're also at Mac and Jack Sports. You can Google us and see our show and some of our past shows. We're also on Instagram. And we're also on Twitter at MacManMcGrath. So we're at a lot of places, and you all can come check us out. We also got a great website now, Jack. MacandJackSports.com will bring you to the Mac's Sports Insiders. So, like, follow, share, and subscribe where you can to help us keep growing. I'm Mac with my co-host, Jack Hirsch, legendary boxing writer and former president of the Boxing Writers Association. And we also look to Jack for some of our history on different sports, which he knows a lot about. How you doing today, Jack?
I broke my trivia slump yesterday, so
yes, you did.
Everything is dandy this morning.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And I got another, of course, trivia question for you today, too, Jack.
I thought Saturday was our day off, but
it normally is, but I found a good one, and I think that you will probably know this question. If you know anything about pitching and the history of pitching, I think you're going to have a good shot at this one, Jack. So I'll be getting to that later on the show. First, we're going to cover some of the updates and information. And then before I start that, let me say that our normal guest, Dr. Paul Semendinger from the popular Yankees blog, Start Spreading the News, is under the weather today, so he won't be with us today, but he will be back with us again next week. So, Jack, I put a poll out in the Yankee groups that me and my assistant producer, Linda, are members of, and I asked the Yankee groups, after signing DJ LeMahieu, what is the most important signing for the Yankees? The three choices I gave them was starting pitcher, catcher, or just an outfielder. And the results of the poll were interesting. I thought they would go with catcher more than anything else, and that wasn't the case. 88% of them chose pitcher, 11% only chose catcher, and 1% an outfielder.
Yankee fans are smart, Mac.
Yeah, they definitely are. I really thought that the catcher would have more support, with the problem Sanchez has been having. But I do agree that they do need another starting pitcher, especially with Severino. We don't know what he's going to be. He won't be back to midseason. And Herman is out there and he's pitching. He's doing well. But, that's not professionally. He's kind of doing that, in the practice games that he's in. So that was the results of the poll. The Toronto Raptors will start the NBA season, this upcoming season in Tampa, Florida, Jack. Canada denies the request to play there because of COVID.
Let me tell you, they get a taste of that Florida weather. The Raptors might not want to go back to Canada.
That's what I was thinking, Jack. I understand Canada is very, they're very vigilant about the COVID virus and stuff. But, if you keep telling a team that they can't play there, and they go down to Florida and they have some success, who's to say Toronto doesn't move to Florida?
Well, I don't think the Orlando Magic would be too happy because they'd be close by. But look, we have two teams in New York, the Knicks and the Nets that are close by to one another. So it could work out. They do support NBA teams in Florida, actually.
They definitely do. So, I mean, I don't know if Canada – and didn't they play the hockey season? Wasn't one of the hubs
in
Canada?
Tampa Bay Lightnings, the Stanley Cup champions this year. I mean, Tampa's a thriving sports town when you think of it. The Lightning won the Stanley Cup. The Rays went to the World Series. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, with Tom Brady and company, are the most charismatic team in football, and they're Super Bowl contender. And now with the Raptors coming into town, just 1 year removed from being NBA champions.
Yeah.
Tampa's an exciting place. It's a shame fans can't go to the games, but
yeah, definitely. I agree with that. So we have the GM, Sean Marks, welcomes trade rumors of Harden going to the Nets, but he thinks it would take a third team to get him to
What is Sean Marks supposed to say? Is he supposed to say, oh, yeah, we want Harden, we're going to give up players, or we don't want Harden? Who's going to say they don't want Harden? But if you read between the lines what Sean Marks has been saying lately, he's been saying, well, we don't want to give up our whole future for anyone. Right. And that's his way of saying, no, James Harden is not a serious proposition for the Nets.
Right.
Well, everything they're going to have to give up, Jared Allen, Dinwiddie, Calvin LeVert, and a number one, and a couple of number one picks. There's no way, and it's not worth it. James Harden is not worth it. He's not even worth the three players I mentioned, let alone the picks. They have three really good young players who are going to be with the team after Kyrie Irving is off the team.
Definitely.
Why would they want to mortgage their future? It would be revisiting the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce deal with the Celtics if they got Harden. Admittedly, Harden's a star for a couple of years. He's going to open the window for championship, but if they don't get it, the deal's going to be a total flop. Definitely
agree with that. And good morning to Keith Angle, too, who chimed in this morning.
He's in a good mood because his Patriots are playing the Houston Texans.
Yes, sir. Yes, he is.
Weekend on.
Yes. The Knicks have interest in Gordon Hayward, Jack. Hayward, they need a point guard. And, of course, assistant GM Walt Perrin, he drafted Hayward. The Knicks do have $40 million in cap room, just dropped to $35 million as they took on, I think it's Ed Davis's contract for two more 2023
Mac, right
round.
Now.
Let me finish. Let me finish, Jack. For two more 2023 second round picks. So really they have available is $35 million, and they do have interest, of course, in getting Hayward.
Right, but right now the Celtics are in serious discussions with the Indiana Pacers, trying to put together a package for Gordon Hayward. It depends how badly the Pacers want him. The Pacers do want him without question, and that's where Gordon Hayward wants to go. He wants to go to Indiana. And it's funny the relationships that players have with teams. If a player has a very good relationship with a team and they like him, it's human nature that they're going to want to accommodate him and send him to a place of his choice. So apparently that's the case with Gordon Hayward, no hard feelings. And the Celtics it doesn't seem like they want to get stuck with him at that amount, like $34 million a year.
Yeah.
That's substantial money. And it's surprising Gordon Hayward would opt out at a $34 million, a year deal.
Especially with the injuries he's had lately. Mark Sanchez, the former quarterback, who was the last quarterback the Jets had when they were in the playoffs, says Darnold has some tough decisions ahead to make for longevity, that if he is injured this year, he shouldn't even play if the season is lost, and that the Jets haven't even tried to put an offense around him. I do agree with that a little bit, Jack, but if he doesn't play this year, what team is willing to take a chance on Darnold where he hasn't played, too much in the last couple of years.
Mac, you're a big booster of Sam Darnold. I know that. He's been in the league. This is his third year in the league. When this season ends, and it is winding down, he's not playing tomorrow. There are not that many games left. He would have played 3 years in the NFL, and we don't know whether or not he should be the Jets franchise quarterback of the future. We still don't know how much time is a guy auditioning for that job. You have to have an idea. You know what? You and I have to do one show. We're going to do this, Mac. We didn't talk beforehand. We're going to go over every NFL team and say 3 years from now, their current quarterback, do we think he's going to be the guy 3 years from now on that team?
Yeah.
You did that with Sam Darnold. Could you look me in the eye and say, yes, 3 years from now, Sam Darnold's going to be the Jet quarterback? I mean, I couldn't say that now.
No, I couldn't, but there's a couple reasons for that, Jack. One, again, as you said, he really hasn't played that much in the years he's been signed there. He's shown some promise when he has played, but the way the Jets are run, getting rid of good receivers, getting rid of their good players, not having any weapons around him. I think it's more of a case of him not having support than him himself. And again, with him being injured, I mean, how do we know? We really don't know, Jack. So I can't for sure say that. All I can say is when he has started, and he has started for the year, he's 6-2 and without any weapons. So I still think Sam Darnold could be potentially a real good quarterback, franchise quarterback. I don't know.
Matt, that was last year, 6-2. They haven't won a game this year, and Darnold was
right.
The quarterback. Okay, granted, you might say it's not his fault. Build the team around him. Fair. One way or the other, there's got to be 100% commitment to either Sam Darnold or to move on from him. You can't get caught in the middle. The Jets are going to be in a position that really looks like to draft either Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields. Yeah. A firm decision has to be made. Either they draft a quarterback and trade Sam Darnold or trade that draft picks for a number of other picks. But at this point, do the Jets know the answer what they want to do? That's the bad part. I don't think they know the answer unless ownership is in love with Adam Gase, and they know they want to keep him as coach despite the disaster that's going on this year. And Adam Gase obviously isn't a Sam Darnold guy. So if Adam Gase comes back as the coach, there's no way I could see Sam Darnold remaining as the quarterback because he hasn't developed under Adam Gase at all.
But, Jack, you got to realize you had a third choice that you left out there. Why can't they keep Sam Darnold and draft a good quarterback and let them compete?
It makes no sense at all, Mac. You're not going to have Sam Darnold as your backup quarterback under any circumstance. Sam Darnold can yield a late first-round draft choice from a team. For example, Pittsburgh Steelers are drafting late in the first round. You don't think they give that pick up for Sam Darnold, who down the line could replace Ben Roethlisberger? I mean, teams are thinking that way. Sam Darnold will still have some value as far as draft picks go because there has to be a team out there that's willing to take a serious chance on him. Okay?
Well, you say that makes no sense, but yet Kansas City Chiefs have done it. The Green Bay Packers did it. Wait a minute. They did take a quarterback. The Eagles just did it. The Packers just did it again. They took a higher draft pick when they already have a valid starting quarterback. So you say that's not an option. I disagree with you. I definitely think it's an option. I think that if you have a competition in the offseason to see who's the better quarterback, then you can trade that quarterback on trade deadline.
No, Mac, no, it didn't quite happen that way. I know what you're saying. Hypothetically, on the surface, what you're saying is correct, but it's not really correct. The Chiefs took Patrick Mahomes. When they drafted him, the plan was he was going to sit 1 year behind Alex Smith. It wasn't a quarterback competition, him and Alex Smith. He was sitting 1 year behind Alex Smith, case closed. And at the end of the year, they moved on from Alex Smith. The Packers moved up in the draft to take Jordan Love, a quarterback, but he was in no competition with Aaron Rodgers in any way, shape, or form. Everyone knew Aaron Rodgers is a quarterback. This year, as long as he's the Aaron Rodgers, we know he's going to be the quarterback the year after, or for how long it's going to take. In Miami with Tua, they drafted Tua knowing he was going to be the heir apparent. He wasn't getting into a quarterback competition with Ryan Fitzpatrick.
I didn't
until he was ready.
I didn't say Tua. Yeah.
Lawrence, and say, okay, you're going to be the quarterback next year. You just sit 1 year behind Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold's a young quarterback with a future, with upside, supposedly.
Right. You just said the key word. You just said, Jack. You just said that first. You just said the key word, supposedly, and I never mentioned Tua as far as an example of that. All I'm saying right now is that we don't know what Darnold can do. All right. We don't know, as you just said, whether he can be a starting quarterback or he can stay healthy. What is wrong with drafting a really good quarterback, having a competition, and as far as what you said with Patrick Mahomes, if Patrick Mahomes in practice didn't play well, he wouldn't have been the starter. So we don't know. Even a first-round draft pick quarterback, Jack, doesn't always work out. So what you're saying about Patrick Mahomes is they drafted him to be the next quarterback. They drafted him to potentially be the next quarterback. They didn't think he was going to come in here and be the starting quarterback right off the rip. They didn't know that for sure. He still hadn't played against NFL competition. I don't think it's a bad idea for the Jets to take one of the top 4 quarterbacks, bring him in, and have him do a competition against Sam Darnold and let the best quarterback win, as long as they have a preseason next year.
Chances are the Jets are going to have their choice, and it's going to be Trevor Lawrence, maybe Justin Fields. They're not going to have to draft down in the draft. And what you're saying, we have a sharp disagreement here, Mac, because Sam Darnold is going to have some value if they put him on the trading block. The number 1 overall in the pick is going to have a lot more value. But the point I'm trying to make, this is Sam Darnold's 3rd year, and we don't know.
I agree.
You have yet to say Sam Darnold should be the Jet quarterback of the future, because if you felt that way, no need for any quarterback competition. Just the idea that you're mentioning there should be a quarterback competition means Sam Darnold hasn't proven himself. He hasn't gone out there and taken the job and grabbed it. This is his 3rd year.
Yeah, I
rookie, 3rd year. How much longer are we going to wait?
Well, again, I think there's a few reasons because of that, and only one of them is because he's been hurt and hasn't been able to show it. Myles Garrett will be out because he's placed on a COVID-19 list for this upcoming game. Myles Garrett is their biggest passing threat and one of the best linemen on Cleveland. We'll see what effect that has on the game coming up Sunday, Jack.
Good game with the Eagles. Listen, Carson Wentz isn't complaining. That's okay.
No, he's not.
He hasn't always handled the pass rush as well as he should. And not having Myles Garrett in his face, I mean, that's not good news for Giant fans.
Right. So they got Taysom Hill will start instead of Winston for the Saints at quarterback. It kind of makes sense. Hill's been there longer. He's got that big contract. I don't know if he's as good a passer as Winston is, but he is an exciting player. He can throw the ball. We'll see what happens. That's a big.
He's a throwback, Mac. He's your type of player.
Yeah.
That man's a wide receiver. He's a running back, and he's a quarterback.
Yes, and
all those positions in the NFL. They talk about an all-purpose player. That's him, Taysom Hill, in the skill position. I'm shocked by this move.
Yeah.
Jameis Winston went as a free agent to the New Orleans Saints from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers because the Buccaneers didn't want him anymore when they had Tom Brady. He had that job for a lot of years, Jameis Winston. He was a former number 1 overall choice in the NFL draft, okay? So it just shows you the way it doesn't always work out. But the problem, Jameis Winston wound up being an interception machine. It was brutal, those pick sixes and a lot of bad decisions. The guy would be absolutely brilliant at times, the way he could rack up yardage, but the mistakes were unbearable. But he tried to pull a Teddy Bridgewater, what he did at New Orleans under Drew Brees. Back Brees up, maybe get in some games and reestablish his value. Now, and he took a very low contract, Winston, barely over the minimum. And now Winston is not even getting the opportunity with Brees out. When Brees had to leave the last game, Winston came in and played. I believe he completed 6 or 10 passes. None were picked off, even though one came close. And it's quite a surprise, Jameis Winston isn't getting the call.
I mean, I'm not as shocked as you, Jack. I think that, you got Hill, who's been there longer, knows the system better. Like I said, I don't think he's a passer, Winston is, but I think he just knows the system better, and he does
How
give
long
him.
does it take to learn the system? Jameis
Jack,
Winston has been with them all year.
You'd be surprised.
They're not just starting. They didn't get him off the waiver wire.
You'd be surprised when you don't take snaps and you're trying to learn a brand new system, and work with the receivers, find out the reads you both have at the same time on the field, and are they going to stop running? Are they going to sit down? And to get all that knowledge, not only that, but with the plays and what your check downs are and what your audibles are, it can be a little confusing, Jack, especially if you don't get the snaps. So he did sign with him. I say he would need a whole year to.
Well, let me ask you this, Matt. When Brees had to leave the last game, Hill didn't go in. Jameis Winston went in.
Yeah.
So can I rightfully assume that Jameis Winston took the snaps, the majority, with the second team? That he was the primary backup, considering that he went into the game?
You could, but you could also assume that, Brees got 90% of the snaps and that they split the snaps between Brees and Hill, the rest of them. So,
We got to talk to Byron Williams about
yes, we do.
Yeah,
we got to talk. Sure.
A little surprised or what? Yeah.
Yeah. It depends on how the coach runs his practices. So, listen, guys, if you want to get the clothing of your favorite teams, jerseys, hats, all gear, we have the place for you. It's Fanatics. Just go to the Mac and Jack Sports.com website, Mac's Sports Insiders. Click on their link. It brings you right to their store just in time for Christmas. Order your special someone's birthday or just treat yourself to your favorite team's clothing and gear. That's macandjacksports.com website, Mac's Sports Insiders. Click on the Fanatics link for all your team's clothing and gear. So, Jack, we're going to start doing our debate show here. We got our first topic, even though we started debating already, which was great. Good warm-up. And the first debate topic we have, Jack, has to do with the New York Knicks and Russell Westbrook. There's a chance that he's up for grabs, that the Knicks have a chance maybe to go and sign him. So you go first on this one. Should the Knicks sign, if they can, Westbrook?
No. And I say this with the understanding Broadway has to eventually open. When it does open, Madison Square Garden opens, and the Knicks fan base is loyal. You got to give them this. They've been through some dreadful times, yet they show up at MSG. And the Garden has given Knicks fans in recent years a lousy product. A lousy product. Russell Westbrook is going to create big-time excitement. He's a highlight reel. How can you not get excited about the Knicks getting Russell Westbrook? But Russell Westbrook is like that fancy box in the supermarket. You want to grab it off the shelf, put it in your cart, pay for it, take it home with you. Then you empty it out of the box and say, this doesn't taste that good after all. But the box looks good on your shelf. You see the box on your shelf, and you get a good feeling that the box, what's in it, tastes better than it does, and even after you eat it one time, you're still not convinced. Russell Westbrook does not translate to winning. I don't mean he's a selfish guy per se, even though he has been that way at times. Just think of the players he's played with. Kevin Durant left OKC because he didn't want to play with Russell Westbrook anymore. He couldn't take it. Okay, Russell Westbrook stays with OKC. And Paul George comes over, and he loved Russell Westbrook. They were good buddies. After 2 years there, it was obvious OKC couldn't win because they couldn't play well together. So Paul George leaves to go to the Clippers. Russell Westbrook goes over to the Rockets, where his good buddy James Harden is. James Harden wants out of Houston now. He can't win with Russell Westbrook. He likes Russell Westbrook a lot, but he's more or less said, I can't play with Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook at times is more interested in triple doubles. There's one game against the Warriors. It's late in the game. OKC is blowing them out that game, a regular season game. Russell Westbrook, I think, is one assist short of a triple double, and someone on this team misses the shot, and he kind of gets angry with them up like 25 points or so. The Warrior bench, even though they were down, they were laughing. They picked up on it too. And Russell Westbrook, he's good for the short term. He'll create a buzz for 1 year. You'll enjoy seeing him play. They'll contend for a playoff spot. He'll elevate the team a little bit in the short term. He will. But in the long term, you'll see it was a big waste of time, and you've hindered the growth of your team in the long run by getting Russell Westbrook. So the Knicks should just buyer beware. Don't make the deal.
Well, Jack, I heard your argument, but I haven't heard a real argument of what the Knicks would give up if they got Russell Westbrook, even for a short time. I mean, let's look at Russell Westbrook's career. 9-time NBA All-Star, MVP 2016 through 2017, led the league in scoring 14 and 15, set a record for most triple-doubles with 42. He's 32 years old right now, but still plays like a guy in his 20s. Now, of course, I agree with you. Russell Westbrook, he's not a long-term answer, but his shooting, driving to the basket, assists, getting the team involved in the game, a great defender. He checks all the boxes. The Knicks are young. They need a leader on the floor and a mentor on the court. We talked about Boston's Gordon Hayward, right? Can you imagine if the Knicks could pull off a deal to get Hayward and Westbrook there at the same time? Can you imagine that 2 years where the Knicks would be in the playoffs? Now, Westbrook is not a long-term answer, and we may not get Hayward, but the excitement that will come to New York again, the excitement of basketball that would come back to New York again would bring the fans back and just might, Jack, be great for the future of the Knicks. We actually have a superstar playing with a good young team under a coach that loves to teach, and they now have a leader on the floor. So to say that Russell Westbrook would not help the team or players don't like playing with him, listen, Russell Westbrook is a person who needs attention just as much as James Harden needs attention, just as much as Durant. He's maybe not in their class, but he's pretty darn close to it. I think the problem with Russell Westbrook and other stars is that the stars get jealous of Westbrook because Westbrook can put on a show even with them there. They're not the main guy anymore. Westbrook would be a great addition to the Knicks right now, if only for 2 or 3 years, Jack. I think he would help lead the team on the court. He's aggressive. He plays hard. He's got the right attitude, and that would help out the younger players, Jack.
Mac, you left out one important stat. You dazzled me with all Westbrook's stats. I know he led the league in scoring. He was this. One important stat. He's never been to an NBA Finals for a superstar. Most superstars find their way onto the NBA Finals, especially at his age and the amount of years he's been in the league. And he hasn't been to an NBA Finals. And you were backing up my argument. He is going to help in the short term.
Right.
Absolutely. He will make the Knicks better for a couple of years. How can he not? The Knicks are pathetic. They're so bad now. He'll elevate them. He'll create a buzz in the Garden. But guess what? After 2 years of Russell Westbrook, we're going to see the franchise isn't meeting its goal of moving closer to a championship, even though that's a long way off. Okay, but we want to inch towards a championship little by little. With Russell Westbrook, you'll go up, and before you get to the 20th floor, Russell Westbrook will take you from the first floor to the 10th floor. And then you're going to remain on the 10th floor for a while, and then you're going to go down to the 5th floor. He's not going to take you any closer to where you want to be.
Listen,
he couldn't get along with Kevin Durant.
I wouldn't get along with Kevin Durant. Why would you not want a player that has been there, that has been in the mix, that has played playoff basketball on a young team, that has a coach that loves to teach and that can lead the team on the court? He's not the ultimate answer, of course not, Jack. But not to sign him would be foolish. I mean, you have an experienced playoff, hard-working, experienced man on the floor that is a point guard, which the Knicks need. The Knicks need a point guard more than anything else right now. So here's the guy on the floor. The point guard, as he's supposed to be doing, leading the team. And here's a guy that's done it, a guy that's been there before, a guy that has done it in the NBA at a high level. Why wouldn't you want somebody there to pick up that team, if only for 2 years, Jack? If only for
Mac,
2 years.
in the modern NBA, star players are trying to link on to other star players. In the case of Russell Westbrook, they're running away from him. Like I said, Kevin Durant loved OKC. He loved this town. They drafted him. He tried to make it work with Russell Westbrook. It wouldn't work.
Kevin Durant
wasn't working. James Harden the same way. Paul George, who was very fond of Russell Westbrook personally. I mean, these stars just didn't work. You give him young players, he'll improve the Knicks team in the short term.
Wait, what's wrong with that?
Exciting to watch. The fans will like him, but it's nothing more than a quick fix for a year or two.
What's wrong with that, Jack? What is wrong with bringing the team up a little bit and maybe helping the team grow? They still stockpiled a bunch of draft picks. And as far as you're talking about Durant and you're talking about Harden, they're prima donnas anyway. All they care about is themselves. That's why he went to a championship team.
NBA championships. You could
he went to teams that were up.
To call Durant a prima donna.
Listen,
going a little too far.
I don't think so, Jack. I don't think so. He went on a championship team to win a championship. He didn't go to a good team. He went to a great team that already won over 60 games a year before, just so he could get that championship.
He left a great team to go to the Nets.
Right. And he went there because now he wants to form his own little dream team there. I don't blame him for that. But, don't fault Westbrook because Durant and Harding don't want to play with him. Them guys want the ball all the time anyway.
Moved on too.
Paul George is something different. All right, I'll give you Paul George. I'll give you 1 out of 3, Jack. So let's get on to our next debate, Jack. And we're going to talk a little bit about something that, happened a while back in the 90s. Isaiah Thomas is on especially after the Michael Jordan series that came on, and Isaiah Thomas comes on and says he's upset, of course, that he wasn't picked to go on the Dream Team, and he cited because of the play against Jordan and the Bulls back then that they didn't like him, and that's why he wasn't picked. So I guess I'm going with, should Isaiah Thomas be upset about being left off the Dream Team? And again, Jack, let me make sure because my mind is going. I'm going to say no, he shouldn't be, or yes, he should be.
I say he should have been left off the Dream
I'm going to say
the way he was.
I'm saying he shouldn't.
You could agree with me.
I'm saying he shouldn't, Jack. I'm going to say he shouldn't have been left off the Dream Team. I'm going to tell you why, and I do feel maybe even a little stronger about this.
You're wavering a little on this, Mac, but that's.
I am, but I'm going to give it. I'm going to give you why he shouldn't have been. Now, let me tell you something about the Olympics first, and we've talked about this before. The whole idea of putting together a dream team to me was ridiculous. We did that to show the world that we could beat Venezuela by 50 points. I really, I've lost a lot of interest because of what happened there. I loved it when the kids went out and they played and they beat the experienced older, all so-called amateurs in the other countries, and I loved it. And I don't care what the other countries do, Jack. I loved it. I loved it when the U.S. hockey team, they won against a very experienced amateur, they call amateur hockey team in Russia that just beat the NHL All-Stars that year. I loved it when our young boxers go up against the Cuban, more experienced boxers and beat them. I loved it when our college basketball players went up and they beat the older amateurs over in the other countries. It made it fascinating to me. I was really rooting for them. So now it becomes political, Jack. It becomes, a statement, a misguided show. It's not even the spirit of the Olympics as far as the United States go. So this team is nothing but a super team that is handpicked. It's not like they do in other events and Olympics, right? Our boxers, our field and track, our gymnasts, our young guys have to go through competitions to get on the team to begin with. Some parents, Jack, they take out loans. They put out second mortgages on their house so their young kids can go and try out for the Olympic team. Well, this NBA dream team was all political statement. It's handpicked. It went against everything that the Olympics stood for. So should it be left off the dream team? Of course not. You picked the best basketball players in the NBA at that time to go on to this team so that they can represent the United States while we slaughtered almost every country out there. So why don't you pick Isaiah Thomas? Because there's a bad feelings between him and Michael Jordan, a bad feelings between him and some other players. Who cares? Who really cares? You're picking the best players at the time, the all-stars from the NBA, to represent the United States against other countries. And why not give him that little extra medal in his case of all those trophies he already has, just like everyone else got him, just like Jordan did, just like Ewing did, just like all the other great players did. I mean, it was against all the rules anyway, Jack. It wasn't set up the way that most of the Olympic teams are set up. It's not a competition. It was a hand-picked team. And if you're going to pick a hand-picked team at that time, Isaiah Thomas was the best point guard in the league at that time. The heck with your personal feelings. The heck if you don't like them. The heck if you don't like the Detroit Pistons. I seen Ewing and Jordan get into it. I seen Ewing and some of the other Bulls get into it. I seen Ewing get into it with the Pistons. Chuck Daly's the coach. What are you talking about? Of course, he was the best point guard at the time in the NBA. Of course, he should have been put on the team, Jack.
Mac, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Okay.
For a guy who's always talking about team chemistry, camaraderie, the whole thing, all of a sudden that's not important to you. That one guy is bigger than the team.
Oh, I don't think that.
All of a sudden one guy can be bigger than the team. I'm surprised this is coming from you, Mac, of all people who always say one player's never bigger than the other. Because in the case of Isaiah Thomas, this resurfaced a lot earlier this year with the 10-part series on The Last Dance on the Chicago Bulls, and really on Michael Jordan. That's what The Last Dance was about, the Isaiah Thomas situation. It revisited the 1992 Olympics with the Dream Team. Now, so much of basketball is chemistry, team camaraderie. With the exception of Bill Laimbeer, who really didn't have the talent, who wouldn't even be considered to be a part of an all-star team like that, with the exception of Bill Laimbeer, Isaiah Thomas is far and away the most despised player in the league. Really despised. And people think it was Michael Jordan that left him off the team. Well, Michael Jordan didn't want to play with Isaiah Thomas because he hated the guy. When the Bulls eliminated the Pistons from the playoffs, Isaiah Thomas wouldn't even shake anyone's hand. He walked off the court with the rest of the Pistons. But they asked when Michael Jordan was asked to be on the Dream Team, Michael Jordan said, "Who else is on the team?" And the answer they gave Michael Jordan was, "The guy you're thinking of isn't on the team." That should tell you a lot. That meant Isaiah Thomas, without Michael Jordan even mentioning Isaiah Thomas. Scottie Pippen, during the regular season, the year before they made the selection, said, if Isaiah Thomas is picked to be on the Dream Team, then I'm not going to play. Scottie Pippen said, point out, I just don't want to know from him. Magic Johnson, Isaiah Thomas is one of his best friends, didn't want to play with Isaiah Thomas because when Magic contracted HIV and he needed Isaiah to be there for him, Isaiah went public with things that Magic Johnson felt really put him down, and he was deeply hurt. He did not want to play with Isaiah Thomas. During one of the games, Karl Malone hit Isaiah Thomas deliberately with a vicious elbow to the face and put him out because he hated Isaiah Thomas's guts, because Isaiah Thomas, for all his good qualities, but also was perceived as a bit of a snake in the grass by these players. Larry Bird. Maybe Larry Bird didn't say anything negative about Isaiah Thomas, but if you recall, it was Isaiah Thomas who backed up Dennis Rodman's claim that if Larry Bird weren't white, he would be just another guy. And then Larry Bird had to be burdened with a press conference with Isaiah Thomas where Larry Bird had to say, no, it didn't bother me. So if Isaiah Thomas was on that Olympic team, people would be pestering Larry Bird about Isaiah Thomas the whole time. You mentioned Chuck Daly, Isaiah Thomas's coach. He didn't exactly advocate that strongly for Isaiah Thomas to be on. When they asked him, do you feel bad Isaiah Thomas isn't on the team? Do you want him on? He says, yeah, I want him on the team, and I want Joe Dumars to be on it too.
Yeah.
You know, he kind of skirted the issue. He didn't go hyper. He didn't act angry, Chuck Daly. Also, let's face it, from a basketball perspective, Mac, no one was going to beat that Dream Team. They had it won. On their worst day, they would have beaten anyone else at that time. But at that time, that one guy who wound up replacing Isaiah Thomas was John Stockton. He slid into the position. At that time in their careers, John Stockton was on a level with Isaiah Thomas and may have been even a little better fit as a pure point guard. Not that it mattered. They were so superior. They could have played Patrick Ewing at the point.
That's
and
the
they
truth.
would have won the game. And if you look at their stats, entering right after the Dream Team Olympics, Isaiah Thomas averaged 17.6 points a game, Stockton 15.1, but Stockton had 12 assists a game to 8.5 of Isaiah, and they had the same amount of rebounds. And Stockton was an excellent defensive player, so they were pretty evenly matched at that point in their career. Last but not least, David Robinson was recently asked about Isaiah Thomas being left off, and it seemed like he had nothing personal against Isaiah, wasn't him. David Robinson said that has a lot to do with team chemistry, and he doesn't think it maybe would have been a good fit with all the guys on the team to have Isaiah around, because it would have made them feel very uncomfortable. So Isaiah did it to himself.
Listen,
enemies he made, he
listen,
wasn't
Jack,
a victim
do you really believe that everybody loved Michael Jordan when they played against him? Do you really believe that everybody loved Patrick Ewing when they played against them, or even Malone? Or no, of course
not.
But
they didn't hate their guts.
Listen, Jack. You think every team, they all get along in the locker room? Do you really believe that? They don't, Jack.
Dream team
when you play,
they love one another.
When you play, and especially with them breaking all the rules of the Olympics, you're supposed to pick. This is what the whole idea was, to put our best players on a team. Players, not that they got along and they drank tea or beer afterwards. That wasn't what the purpose of this team was. It was to go to show that we had the greatest basketball players in the world. Isaiah Thomas was the best point guard in the NBA, flat out. John Stockton could handle a candle to him shooting. He was just as good as Isaiah. Isaiah was just as good as him with assists and a better defender, in my opinion. I'm just trying to say, Jack, the way they formed that team was they didn't have a competition. There wasn't tryouts. There wasn't a scrimmage.
You didn't need tryouts. You knew who the best were.
Well, to find team chemistry, why wouldn't you have scrimmages, Jack?
Mac,
this was a hand-picked popularity team. This is what it was. There was no scrimmages scheduled. There was no to see if there was any chemistry between certain players. They picked a bunch of players that were the greatest at the time. They put them together, broke every rule, I think, in the Olympics. And that's why I don't like watching Olympics.
Mac, you said the best players should go to the Olympics.
No, I don't say that. I said they did that.
The United States Olympic hockey team, Herb Brooks cut a number of players, and they asked him, how can you cut these guys? These are your best players. He said, I'm not looking for the best players. I'm looking for the right players. Guys who could play together, team chemistry. That's what it's all about. If it wasn't for you, you'd have a bunch of Antonio Browns on every team.
Did Chuck Daly cut any of the Dream Team players, Jack?
No, the team was basically made up, and that was that.
How do they know there's chemistry? How do they know if there's chemistry? How do you know if there's chemistry? How do you know if there's chemistry if they've never played together on a team? How do you know that? You don't. This was a popularity contest of the most talented, best players in the league at the time.
Michael Jordan might not have even played if Isaiah Thomas was on the team.
So we would have got another.
Might not have played.
So we would have got another guard.
So to accommodate Isaiah Thomas, you're going to leave star players off. They might not have even played. That's how much they hated him. He was the only guy they felt that way about in the NBA. They knew to get Jordan to play. Having Isaiah Thomas there would have been an uncomfortable situation. Had Isaiah been there and Jordan played, which he might have, there would have been nonstop tension with all the guys. They would have been talking to Isaiah. They would have snubbed him. Practices would have gotten hostile. It would have been a bad fit.
Listen, they were mad at Isaiah because he was a little bit of too much of a competitor. Then they got mad at him because he kissed Magic Johnson on the cheek. He couldn't win. So there you go. So I mean,
you lost this debate, Mac. The Dream Team would vote for me on this.
They would, Jack. They would have, and I guarantee you, because they are royalty. So anyway, I want to hit you with a quick trivia question here to lighten things up here for a minute, Jack. I mean, we're going to switch for this trivia question up to baseball real quick. It's kind of hard, but I think you can get this one. Of course, I have the unfair advantage of knowing what the question is already. So here comes today's trivia question for you, Jack.
I mean, dizzy basketball to baseball.
Yes, I got to throw you off, Jack, because you are that good. So, Jack, here's today's trivia question for you. Listen, there was one pitcher, Jack. Oh, there goes everything. There was one pitcher in baseball that pitched to over 24,000 batters and only gave up 249 walks, and only 115 were unintentional. In other words, intentionally he walked 114 batters. Wow. So if you count the ones that he didn't walk intentionally.
Well, repeat the question from the beginning.
This one pitcher is, of course, in the Hall of Fame, great pitcher.
Yeah.
He faced over 24,000 batters. So he's had some longevity, and he only gave up 249 walks. And you have to excuse me for a minute because I got to pick up my stuff. So I'll let you think about it for one quick second.
One name popped into my head.
Go right ahead.
Yeah, the name that popped into my head, and there's several I can name, but the one name, when you talk about longevity, who had excellent control, I'm going to go with Warren Spahn.
It's a good try, Jack. Good try.
But I guess I
Well,
missed it the way you said good try.
Yeah, I mean, no,
Warren
that's a
Spahn.
good. You did miss it, but it's a good answer. I'll give you another chance because you have even mentioned
No, I
it.
mean, I gave it. Once I miss it, that's it. I mean, I'm not going to keep.
No, I mean,
going
no,
down.
seriously, because that was really good. I want you've even spoke about him before on the show, so I'm gonna give you one more hint, one more try at this, and see if you can get it. So this guy had unbelievable control, as you said, and he faced 24,000 batters and only walked.
I'm not going to try, Mac. When you miss a trivia question, you miss. I'm not going to keep chipping away. Name this guy, that guy. I thought Warren Spahn, the longevity he had, he was an excellent control pitcher.
Right.
It was, I mean,
Greg Maddux, Jack.
Greg Maddux. Yeah.
So
the funny thing about Greg, I wasn't going to get that on a follow-up try. I was thinking more, someone decades before Greg Maddox's time. So I wasn't, in all honesty, if I was going to take your offer for a second answer, I was going to miss Greg Maddux. Greg Maddux, too. You know what answer I would have given for Greg Maddux?
What's that?
Just a guess. A good trivia question, and I don't know the answer for sure. Which pitcher won the most Gold Glove awards?
Right.
Now, I would have thought between Greg Maddux and Jim Cott. I don't know, do either of them hold that record?
Well, I'll give.
The name Greg Maddux, I think of a guy who didn't throw hard, painted corners, who was a phenomenal fielder for a pitcher, but I wouldn't have gotten that one with that control.
And now, even that you mentioned that, Greg Maddux also had a couple Silver Slugger awards, believe it or not. He was a good hitter.
Yeah,
so,
wow.
Greg Maddux, unbelievable control.
Right. I guess, the longevity factor with Warren Spahn, is popping into my head. And Warren Spahn, talk about old school, a guy who could go his whole career, not be hurt, go complete games late into innings. I mean, one of the more underrated pitchers of all time when you think of Warren Spahn.
Agree, 100%.
Greg Maddux,
unbelievable pitcher. Unbelievable pitcher. Unbelievable control.
Has shown us you don't have to throw that hard to be a great pitcher. But that's a great one, you stumped me on. Great one. Greg Maddux.
Okay, so we're going to take a quick break, folks. We'll be back on the other side of these quick messages. We'll continue our debate. And so give us a couple minutes and we'll be right back. Stick with us, folks. Let me go.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
When you hear the word asthma, you probably think of shortness of breath, coughing, or inhalers. Lots of things can trigger asthma, but the fact is that asthma doesn't just attack, it can kill. But with proper medical management, asthma is controllable. If you experience shortness of breath, wheezing, tightness in your chest, or persistent nighttime coughing, you may have asthma. See your doctor and get the facts. You'll breathe easier. For more information, call 211 Infoline. A message from the Connecticut Department of Public Health, keeping Connecticut healthy.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Nina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay,
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. every day. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit here, folks, about Zen Catering. Zen Catering is a new sponsor of ours that, let me get to this here if I can, Jack, real quick. There we go, so you can see our beautiful faces. Zen Catering does small to big parties, whether weddings for hundreds of people or smaller parties like birthdays, anniversaries, or graduation. Z Catering will take care of you. 5 restaurants with top-line chefs preparing your food. Their food truck is perfect for your brewery or busy club when you need food to open. The truck is a little restaurant on wheels with a big variety of choices. Check out Z Catering on the Mac and Jack Sports Insider website at macandjacksports.com page. Click on their link. It brings you right to them. That's Z Catering on the macandjacksports.com link to Mac's Sports Insiders. Click on their link. Z Catering, it's Z-licious. So, Jack, we're going to get back to our debate real quick here. We've had a couple interesting debates so far as whether Isaiah Thomas should have been allowed to be on the team, the Dream Team. We also talked about, whether Russell Westbrook should be signed by the Knicks if they have the opportunity. So now we're going to switch gears and go to the greatest hockey player in history. You go first on this, Jack, and tell me who you got.
Listen, this argument's not easy for me to make because the man didn't have the longevity that a couple of other, iconic hockey players had in the NHL. A number of iconic hockey players had. But during his prime, there was no one better. And I'm referring to the Golden Jet, Bobby Orr. Bobby Orr played only 10 full seasons in the NHL. He played a dozen years, but 10 full seasons. And his career was cut short by injuries. Now, if we're going to say Bobby Orr was not the greatest hockey player of all time because he didn't have the longevity, now we can't say Sandy Koufax was the greatest pitcher because he didn't have the longevity. We're talking about peak value here. Bobby Orr was the greatest defenseman of all time, hands down. He revolutionized the game of hockey because defensemen always are told to lay back. But Bobby Orr would attack the goal. He would attack the goal, and he was so fast, he would get back on defense right after attacking the goal. He mastered going coast to coast on the hockey rink. Most of the time, players are told, pass the puck because it gets there quicker down the ice than you taking it yourself. But Bobby Orr was so lightning fast, passing the puck would have slowed down the progress of the team. I mean, he was, so iconic for the town of Boston, playing his career for the Boston Bruins. In fact, after Bobby Orr retired, the Boston Globe had a poll saying who was the greatest athlete in the history of sports in Boston. He beat out Bill Russell and he beat out Ted Williams to win the award. I mean, just think of that. Who beats out Ted Williams and Bill Russell in Boston? Bobby Orr did. That's how great he was. He's the only defenseman in history to have 9 hat tricks. That's 3 goals in a game. And once again, defensemen, it's not their job to score at all. They're not expected to score, just play defense. But he was a defenseman who did more than offensive players did. The first defenseman to score 30 goals in a year, then 40. The first player to record 100 assists in the season. Yeah, Boston was irrelevant until he came over, and then he led them to 2 Stanley Cup wins in 1970 and 1972. Let me tell you how great he was and how respected he was. When he was forced to retire early in his career, at age 31, the NHL waived the 3-year waiting period for players to get in the Hall of Fame, for him to get in the Hall of Fame, to induct him immediately. Hockey News rated him only behind Wayne Gretzky as the second greatest player of all time. And the reason Bobby Orr was second and not first by Hockey News is because he didn't have quite the longevity. Okay, but at his peak when he played, he was the greatest ever, the Golden Jet.
You know, I agree. Bobby Orr was definitely the greatest defenseman in hockey in history. There's no doubt about it. I used to watch him when I was really into hockey way back when. Incredible player. You know, Jack, if you ask most hockey fans and experts, 90% would probably say Wayne Gretzky is the greatest of all time, and they wouldn't be wrong. I would just disagree. In the history of hockey, there is only one player I would pick over Gretzky, and that's Gordie Howe. Gordie Howe played 26 seasons, Jack, nicknamed Mr. Hockey at retirement. He had 801 goals, 1,049 assists, and 1,850 points in 26 years. He was a 23-time All-Star. That's a record for most games he has and seasons, of course. Starting in 1946, he led the league in points in 50 and 51, 53 and 54, 56 and 57, 62 and 63, won 4 Stanley Cups with the Red Wings 4 times, won 6 Hart trophies, retired playing hockey, Jack, at 52 years old, almost as old as I am. He became the namesake Gordie Howe hat trick because he had so many hat tricks. He actually started and played with his son on a professional hockey team.
Mark Howe, yeah.
Yes, and he played with the Hartford Whalers when they were down here in Connecticut. He's also called the King of Hockey, the legend. Howe's strength was his scoring ability, his speed, and he's a perfect example of the modern-day forward, Jack. I mean, what he does right now, forwards, back then forwards, they try to emulate today. With all his accomplishments and awards, I don't know who is more an integral part of hockey than Gordie Howe. Of course, again, Wayne Gretzky is a great argument. Neither one of us took him, but he also is in that argument. Bobby Orr, a great defenseman. But when I think of hockey, Jack, and I'm thinking of the history of hockey, the man that comes to mind is Gordie Howe, Jack.
Well, Wayne Gretzky if he wasn't the greatest hockey player of all time, he was one of the top three. What elevated Wayne Gretzky was the Edmonton Oilers' run of Stanley Cup championships. But it should be pointed out when Wayne Gretzky went to the Los Angeles Kings, 2 years later, the Edmonton Oilers won the Stanley Cup without Gretzky.
Yeah.
So to think they won it because of Gretzky, he was just an important part of the team, but it shouldn't be thought of as being the reason. Listen, Gordie Howe was tough as nails too. You left that out. No one messed with Gordie Howe. You check him hard into the boards, you're going to pay a bad price later on. And when he first played with his son, Mark Howe, he was his policeman. If anyone bothered Gordie Howe's boy, they'd have to deal with Gordie Howe. So they left his son alone. Gordie Howe was the ultimate tough guy as well. He would fight during an era when the hockey players fought a lot, and he'd win his fights. So no one wanted to mess with him. I'm just talking about when they actually played. Gordie Howe and Wayne Gretzky had greater careers than Gordie Howe. By that measure,
Bobby Orr.
Than Bobby Orr. By that measure, Wayne Gretzky and Gordie Howe should be rated ahead of Bobby Orr. But for peak value, you put them on the ice when they're at their very best. Bobby Orr had more value to the team. He was a greater player. He dominated the actual game more.
Well, I agree that Bobby Orr would be in the top three for me too, Jack. I think the only real knock against Wayne Gretzky was he was a tremendous skater. There's no doubt about it. But physically, he was not one of the ones that would be an enforcer. They kind of protected Gretzky a lot.
Matt, LeBron James is going to have a better career than Michael Jordan when all's said and done. If he hasn't already, a better career. I'm not talking about the amount of rings. That's a team thing. But even that's tightening up. But at their peak, when the two of them were at their very best on the court, Jordan supporters are going to argue that Jordan was bad at his peak, but Jordan's peak wasn't as long.
Right. But I would agree at both at their best. I would pick Jordan slimly over LeBron James. And I don't mean so much. Maybe I shouldn't have used the basketball analogy. Right.
The point I'm trying to make, Bobby Orr at his very best was as good as anyone has been in any sport.
Okay, I'll go along with that. We got a question from Dean Coleman, and this kind of goes off the debate for a second, gives us a quick break. He wants to know, are the Browns going to make the playoffs, Jack? What's your opinion on that?
I know Dean. Dean's a good guy. Dean's a very good guy. Thanks for listening in, Dean. Are they going to beat the Eagles tomorrow? That's the question now with Myles Garrett out. And I think they will. I mean, I think they'll make the playoffs. I mean, they're kind of like just trudging along. I believe, what are they, 6-3 right now, if I'm not mistaken? At 6-3, I think you're looking at a 10-6 season. That'll be good enough to make the playoffs. And then I look for an early elimination for the Browns. Is that going to make the season a success? I guess so, considering how they've done.
I don't know, Jack. I think the Browns will be lucky to get into playoffs. They don't seem to play. Good against good teams, and against the easier teams. I mean, they just barely got by the Bengals, and when they face the better teams in the league, they have a lot of problems. So that's Dean. Thanks for listening, Dean. So now we're going to push on to our next topic, Jack, and that's the greatest middle linebacker in football history. And I get to start this debate. Now, Jack, in my time football, I'm a big football nut, played, coached, and have watched it for years. And I've seen all the old clips of Sam Huff and Ray Nitschke. I even got a chance to watch Dick Butkus play. I've seen Mike Singletary. I've seen some of the better linebackers or the most intimidating linebackers, Jack Lambert. I even watched the current day middle linebackers, and some of them are ferocious. To me, watching football as long as I have and being involved in the sport, there was no better than Harry Carson. Harry Carson was drafted. He was drafted from South Carolina State University, where he won the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference Player of the Year twice in a row. First player ever to do so. His college team, he led his college team with 17 sacks and 117 tackles. He was originally a defensive end. That's how fast he was, Jack. So the Giants draft him, and he gets together with three other linebackers when they went to a 3-4 defense. It was called the Crunch Bunch that had Brian Kelly, Brad Van Pelt, and LT, considered one of the greatest linebacker crews ever. He also was there when they became the Big Blue Wrecking Crew, and their defense dominated teams during the 80s. Listen, he was even Bill Belichick, who has been a defensive coordinator for years, has called him the best all-around linebacker he's ever coached, and that's coming from somebody who coached Lawrence Taylor. So let's talk about how big.
Well, Bill Belichick, Mac, let me cut in. He said that Lawrence Taylor was the greatest football player he ever saw.
Right.
He didn't say Harry Carson was better than LT.
He said, Jack, quote, Carson is the best all-around linebacker he has ever coached. That's a quote from him, Jack. So let's talk
heard
about.
him say otherwise.
Well, you might have heard him say that he
that playing both ends.
Well, he might have been, Jack, but I'm just telling you what he was quoted as saying. So let's talk about the quick and powerful linebacker and one of the most intimidating linebackers in football history. At 6'3", 240 pounds, he played against the great offensive lines of the Cowboys of the 70s, played the offensive line, the great offensive line against the San Francisco 49er Super Bowls, the great Washington Redskins line called the Hogs, and every year went up against perhaps one of the hardest running backs in history of football, John Riggins. And not only would he stop Riggins, Jack, during these games, I personally saw him tackle the pulling guard and Riggins at the same time. He's the only linebacker I ever saw meet the great Earl Campbell in the hole and stop him dead in his tracks at the goal line. He was named by the coaching panel as the greatest middle linebacker in a 3-4 defense, and that's what held him back, Jack. If he was in a 4-3 defense, like Mike Singletary, like Dick Buckets, like Sam Huff, like even Ray Lewis, he would have been easily the greatest middle linebacker of all time. There would have been no discussion. Working in a 3-4 defense, Jack, you have to take on blockers. In a 4-3 defense, the defensive linemen fill the gaps, leaving you to move around the field and make tackles. But with Carson's speed, not only did he take on the big guards and tackles and make the play, he went sideline to sideline. He was the enforcer on that defense, while LT was more of a big playmaker, made the sacks, created fumbles, created havoc. Carson was the captain of that football team. And if you ran up the middle or to the outside, you had to be worried because 53 was coming.
Mac, you're trying to dazzle us with your football knowledge. I'm surprised you're not talking about nickel and dime packages and all that. I mean, listen, one thing about debates that I don't like, it seems like it's a political campaign, like one candidate against the other, where you sometimes have to say things that might seem negative towards the opposing viewpoint.
Right.
And it's very difficult for me to say anything negative about Harry Carson, a great, great giant, a great giant. But the thing about Harry Carson, we're talking about the greatest of all time here. Right. We're not talking about merely a great player who's a Hall of Famer. And speaking of the Hall of Fame, it took Harry Carson 18 years to get in.
Yep.
And as I recall, Harry Carson was going to boycott the Hall of Fame. He said, even if I'm inducted at one point, he said, I'm not going.
But we're not talking about what he said, Jack. We're not talking about what he said. We're talking about
but
his career.
This is the fact. This is
his
the
career
fact about Harry Carson. The Pro Bowl team is made up of coaches and peers. Harry Carson was a first-team Pro Bowler 2 times in his career. He made 9 Pro Bowls.
Right.
Two times in his career. That's not enough evidence for the greatest of all time. And waiting 18 years to make the Hall of Fame, that doesn't quite come into the category of the greatest of all time. Great player, absolutely. But you talk about the greatest middle linebacker. I mean, there are few guys you could name. I thought you'd go with Dick Butkus. I mean, you kind of surprised me. You love those old school guys like Dick Butkus, but the style of game was different then. You made a good point with Harry Carson. He was more restricted as a middle linebacker, given a little less freedom than some of the other guys like Butkus, Singletary. But I'll tell you who did it all. The greatest middle linebacker I ever saw was Ray Lewis, an emotional leader of his team. He, in the 13 years he made it to the Pro Bowl, he was a first-team Pro Bowler 7 times, as opposed to 2 times with Harry Carson. Like Harry Carson, his team won, a couple of Super Bowls, but he was a Super Bowl MVP. He was the emotional leader of his team, of his defense, of his whole team, defense and offense. People look to Ray Lewis for leadership. Did they look to Harry Carson for leadership? Yes, but they looked to several guys for leadership. Now, LT didn't look to Harry Carson for leadership. He did his thing. They were a veteran team. Phil Simms didn't look to Harry Carson over the defense for any type of team leadership. But every one of those Raven teams looked to Ray Lewis for leadership. Even the coaches, they would leave discipline alone. They would let Ray Lewis handle it within the locker room to be focused. One of the coaches, I forgot his name. I don't know why I'm having a brain cramp, but he said, I wouldn't want to be the guy who has to explain to Ray Lewis why I didn't do this or that. Not the coaching staff, but to Ray Lewis. He played in the Pro Bowl in 3 different decades, Ray Lewis. And unlike Harry Carson, who waited 18 years to get in the Hall of Fame, and Harry Carson was a great player, maybe shouldn't have had to wait that long. Ray Lewis got in first year of eligibility. Like Harry Carson, granted, he also had great players. He had Ed Reed, Tyrell Suggs. Both of them had great players around them. So we can't start using that as a crux. I'm not going to say, well, Harry Carson had, LT and name some of the others. I'm just not going to do that.
Right.
And it shouldn't be with Ray Lewis as well. But for covering the whole field, no middle linebacker could cover the whole field the way Ray Lewis did. No one.
Well, I can first of all, what you said as far as not looking to Harry Carson for leadership, he was called the captain. Personally, we've had Pepper Johnson on, another all-pro linebacker and coach of the New England Patriots, who said Carson was the one that set the tone in the locker room, in the film room. He even got on Pepper Johnson one time for falling asleep. LT also said, called him Mr. Carson because he taught LT a little bit about playing the role of linebacker, even though LT was a wild card and turned loose. Him and LT got a huge falling out because of LT's off-field antics and the problems he got into, where actually Harry Carson went to LT's Hall of Fame ceremony uninvited, and LT broke down and cried. This is how much Lawrence Taylor regarded Harry Carson. All I know, Jack, is when I have the greatest, probably one of the greatest next to Tom Landry, the greatest defensive coordinators of all time, say that Harry Carson was the best overall linebacker he ever coached, I listened to that. So I agree.
Bill Belichick, you mean?
Yeah, Bill Belichick. I agree.
Let me tell you with leadership, okay? No doubt Harry Carson was a great leader, and that's why I'm reluctant. I don't like some debates because it seems like I'm talking negative about Harry Carson.
Right.
One of the greatest Giants in history, a great player. But when you saw before the game, the team would huddle for the last words. The players are psyched together. With the Ravens, it was always Ray Lewis talking to the team, not listening. Ray Lewis gathered the troops together. It would be his voice first, foremost, and only really letting the players know what was expected. The coaches wouldn't have to do it. Ray Lewis was an extra coach on there. Harry Carson was great. He led more by example. He
Jack,
quietly, but
I agree. Ray Lewis was, probably in the top 3 linebackers, middle linebackers of all time. I agree with that. A tremendous athlete, not just a leader, but a tremendous athlete. But, Bill Parcells had Harry Carson stand to his right every national anthem, some form of luck for support by how much he invested in Harry Carson. And when the Giants went to their first Super Bowl, and this is really telling about the captain, the only captain that went out on the field for the coin toss was Harry Carson. That's how much that team respected him. And if you remember, Harry Carson started in the late 60s. He was late 70s when he was drafted on a bad Giant team, and they ended up becoming one of the
Ray Lewis retired on top after they won the Super Bowl.
Yes, he did.
So we
Two
have
great
no
linebackers.
negative recollections of Ray Lewis, the player. Every moment there was greatness of his whole
Yes,
career.
I agree. I definitely agree with that. So, Jack, we're going to turn to baseball really quick, and we're going to go with the second greatest reliever in Major League Baseball history. I think there's consensus.
Oh, I thought in the New York.
No, sorry.
Right.
New York. Right. You are correct. My mistake. I got to fire the producer. It is in the New York, Boston, and Philly area.
Well, if you don't tell the producer what we want, Mac, what the producer, you set the tone and you tell the producer to set it up.
Yes.
If you don't communicate the right way, you can't blame the producer.
I can blame somebody.
The lack of communication. That's the problem when you have someone who has to be in control the whole time.
Yes.
Mistakes are made.
You are 100% right. So, people on the banner there, it says Major League Baseball history. It is actually in the New York, Boston, Philly history, the second greatest reliever of all time. And I guess the consensus, you would agree, Jack, Mariano Rivera, no question, is number 1.
Yeah, it's hard. We're not going to, even though we debate and we try to be oppositional to a popular view, it would be hard for us to get up here and start saying there's a better reliever than Mariano Rivera. We can make arguments. Maybe guys were on his level, but to say someone is actually better, that would be a little too bold.
I think so.
Both of us agree Mariano's number 1, even though there were a number of other great relievers. Now, when you talk about a reliever, you have to point out the eras are so much different. And you could just point out the Yankee teams. Mariano came to the big leagues in 1995. And in 1996, he was a setup man for John Wetland. And he first became a closer in 1977. 20 years before 1997, in 1977, the Yankees had a reliever, Sparky Lyle. Yes. Now, Sparky Lyle's not my choice, even though he wouldn't be a bad choice. Sparky Lyle won the Cy Young Award for the Yankees as a reliever in 1977. Ironically, Mariano never won the Cy Young Award, ironically. But right. The point I'm trying to make, in the playoffs in 1977, the Yankees were down 2-1, the best 3 out of 5. They're facing elimination. Billy Martin brings his closer in the 4th inning.
Right.
And Sparky Lyle only allows 1 base runner the rest of the way, and the Yankees win the game. The next night, Game 5, the deciding game, Sparky Lyle's brought in the 8th inning, and he's the winning pitcher. Okay? Right. So it's like they'd never do that with Mariano. The closest they came with Mariano was Game 7, the deciding game of the 2003 championship series when the Yankees played the Red Sox to see who would go to the World Series. They pitched Mariano for 3 innings. He pitched 3 shutout innings, gave up 2 hits. Had the game continued, had Aaron Boone not hit the walk-off homer, who knows much longer Mariano would have gone. But you want to know something? In Goose Gossage's time, and he came to the Yankees in 78 as a free agent after pitching, for the White Sox and the Pirates before then. relievers would go some innings. In fact, in 1978, when the Yankees had the sudden death playoff game right before, to see who was going to advance, get into the playoffs, they brought Gossage in the seventh inning in relief for Ron Guidry. That's the way things was. So Goose Gossage has always objected to Mariano Rivera being called the greatest reliever of all time because he's pitched for longer lengths of time.
Right.
My argument is the game has changed, Goose. The game has changed. Mariano was marginally better than you, Goose, but he pitched a shorter amount of time because of, the way the game has changed. But Goose Gossage was the ultimate intimidator. During a time when George Steinbrenner would supposedly try to bully anyone and everyone, Reggie Jackson, when he was on the Yankees, said, Goose is the one man who Big George can't mess with. That's how important and dominating he was. When Goose Gossage was on the mound, wow, what an intimidator. Players were scared of him. I mean, he had 310 saves during his career. He was a 9-time All-Star. What a fastball. I mean, he could throw hard. And he had a setup man in Ron Davis, the way Mariano's had a setup man in, let's say, Jeff Nelson. And he was just a very dominant force. Listen, they brought him on and he replaced the Cy Young Award winning Sparky Lyle, even though Goose didn't think that's how it was going to play out when he came to the Yankees. But when you think of all the relievers who you'd be scared to face, and someone said, well, Eckersley's the best, so on. And Eckersley was basically a starter for the Boston Red Sox.
Right, that's why.
Talking about New York, Philadelphia, and Boston.
Right.
Dennis, we're not talking about Oakland and so on, where Dennis Eckersley really made a lot more of a mark as a reliever.
Definitely.
So Goose Gossage, the best of, best outside of Mariano in the local market.
Yeah, I agree. I think that Goose Gossage today, as you said, the game has changed, would probably be a setup man or a long reliever instead of a closer. I mean, that was his style. Not that he couldn't be a closer today, probably very effective. But if I had a baseball team and if I was managing, I would definitely have Goose Gossage as one of my long relievers or setup men because, I mean, that guy is lights out. And I do agree he's one of the greatest, or maybe in the top 5. Jack, we really.
Dean Coleman put in a comment. Gossage was toughest in October when the weather was cold.
Definitely.
I don't know about that. I recall George Brett taking him deep in the 1980s. So,
well, that bat did sting when you did hit it when it was coming 97 miles an hour at you. We don't give the Mets a lot of love, so I'm going to give them a little bit here. I'm going to go with John Franco. From 1984 to 2005, when he retired, he was the second all-time in saves with 424. Now he's 5th all-time. Still holds the record as a left-handed reliever. His career ERA is at 2.89. Won reliever of the year in 1988. Led the league in saves 88 through 90 in 1994. 4-time All-Star. He was a team captain, and that's very unheard of, being named the team captain as a reliever. He only had a 90 mile-an-hour fastball, really, Jack. But the changeup was unbelievable. It was like a screwball that broke away from right-handed hitters. So he was as effective against right-handed hitters as he was against left-handed hitters. Of course, he was part of the Mets when they were winning. Had a winning team back in the into the 90s and so forth. So I'm going with John Franco just on saves alone at the time, second to Mariano Rivera, who we're comparing him to. Not scary, Jack.
Goose Gossage, who you compared him to. Yeah. John Franco, Mac, was very good. He was consistently good year after year after year. And when you're consistently good, the numbers pile up and they look really, really, nice. Yeah. And so John Franco wasn't a great pitcher. He was a very good one year after year. He was the equivalent of a reliever, what Andy Pettit was as a starter. You're not going to tell me Andy Pettit is a great pitcher, because he's not a great pitcher by any means, but he was a very good pitcher year after year after year. And those are the guys you want. Those are the guys you can win with. Okay?
Well, I mean,
consistency.
and you mentioned Andy Pettit, who was great in big games. I would call him one of the best pitchers in big games there was for the Yankees anyway. But I'm going to go with consistency over a little bit of show, and I don't mean by show that they're all show no go, Jack. I'm saying that if I wanted a relief pitcher that was not Mariano Rivera, a guy that was steady, that would get me the saves, could pitch both sides of the plate, and showing a little Met love here, which we don't do too often, I would say that John Franco is the second greatest.
Well, someone just put in a commented, what about Chapman?
Yeah.
When you give up basically, the game-winning homers the last couple of years in the playoff, I think cool it for a year. Let Chapman kind of
let him
on track and
let him marinate. Yes, let him marinate.
Yeah, Chapman, I'll tell you, I mean, he throws harder than any of them, that's for sure. But
I don't know. There's a lot of
on track. There's even talk. You even mentioned Mac. I think. Are we certain that Chapman is going to close this year? I think he is. But they're paying Zach Britton a lot of money to be a setup man. Setup mans don't get $13.5 million a year.
The thing that bothers me with Chapman is in the biggest moments he's not closing, and that's what you're paying him all that money for. As you said, he's giving up the home runs, he's giving up leads, and that's happened in a lot of different games, Jack, when we really needed him to close the door. In fact, he's made it worse. He's opened the door for the other team to win. And if you have a high paid closer, he's not supposed to do that. He's doing it more than he's helping the team right now in big situations.
Well, with that said, I still want him closing for the Yankees this year, and Britton's setting up.
I don't know, Jack.
Unless Chapman turns into another Edwin Diaz, who could be over 100 miles per hour. As well.
Right. I mean, I don't know, Jack. He worries me. Let's put it that way. So we're going to take our last break for today, folks. We'll be right back on the other side. Stick with us, and we'll be right back.
If you served honorably in our nation's armed forces and you're looking for a way to continue serving your fellow veterans in your community, then join AMVETS. Each year, AMVETS members volunteer millions of hours at VA healthcare facilities from coast to coast, helping to improve the lives of their fellow veterans through the VA Voluntary Services Program. AMVETS posts and departments also participate in a wide variety of community service projects, ranging from Americanism in our schools to supporting the Special Olympics and Boy Scouts of America. If you no longer wear the uniform today, you can still serve through the AMVETS by joining today at amvets.org.
Hi, Grandma. What's for dinner?
Hey, honey, I'm making stew tonight.
Ooh, can Mina come over?
I'm not sure about our new friend. I wonder if there's been any drinking going on. Alcohol at her age can lead to so many bad things. I've been meaning to ask you, what would happen if someone offered you a drink?
Grandma?
This is hard. She's so young, but I know I need to talk to her about it now before someone tries to give her alcohol. If anyone ever does offer you a drink, I want you to say no. I have too much respect for my family, and I don't want to get in trouble.
Okay.
Really?
I promise, Grandma. I love you too.
Okay, how about tasting this stew and telling me what you think?
Some children may try alcohol as young as 9 years old. It's not too early to talk about drinking. For tips on how to begin the conversation, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. That's underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. This message brought to you by SAMHSA and this station.
If you talk and they will hear you every single time.
Oh, we're getting killed.
Yeah, well, Kyle's not here.
How come?
Kicked off the team. Didn't Tim tell you? Kyle and some other kids got caught drinking beer in the park a couple of nights ago.
Really?
Yeah. Zero tolerance. He's out for the season.
Come on, it's a first offense, right?
That we know of. But why should that matter? He knew not to drink. I made it clear to Matt, that's what we expect from him. What have you said to Tim?
Nothing really. A lot of kids try it at this age, so.
Yeah, well, a lot of kids don't try it. I'm not saying I'm asking to be this perfect kid, but if I don't tell him what we expect and why he shouldn't drink, how's he gonna know?
You think kids that age really listen?
They never admit it, but they hear more than you think.
Talk. They hear you. For more information about talking with kids about underage drinking, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. We all make choices. When it comes to alcohol, kids make choices whether to drink or not.
Bye-bye.
Remember, I'm going to Alex's party tonight and sleeping over.
Hey, have a seat for a second. Remind me about that party again.
Alex is just
And adults make choices whether to talk about it. That's true of parents and every other trusted adult in a kid's life. Kids want to know our expectations when it comes to alcohol and other drugs. They want guidance and honest answers to their questions. And it makes a difference when the message is consistent and part of everyday conversations. So talk with your kids and help lead them on a positive path. Because when you talk, they hear you. For more information about talking with your kids about underage use of alcohol and other drugs, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov.
Good morning and welcome back to the Mac and Jack Sports Show here every Wednesday through Sunday, 8 to 10 a.m. Thank you for joining us today, folks. We're having our debate show today, and we got one more debate. And before we get to that, I want to take a little break here and ask Jack one of my favorite segments of Who's Better, Jack?
Mac, I'm having orange juice now, by the way. This isn't alcohol.
Okay.
I know you're thinking what's going through your mind. I mean,
Jack, we don't know that. You could be.
While in debating, there's temptation to drink a little bit.
I mean, you sure there's no vodka in that orange juice, Jack? I mean, listen. I mean,
let me tell you a funny story, Mac. Yeah, can I say a moment?
No, definitely.
I went to a medical convention, a boxing ringside physicians. I was on the board of directors of the American Association of Professional Ringside Physicians, and they had their yearly medical convention in Puerto Rico.
Okay.
They had the cocktail party. Everyone's getting together, and they have an open bowl. Okay. I'm thinking it's fruit punch, and I'm a non-drinker. I had 4 of them. I downed them. I was thirsty. I'm talking to one of the doctors. I'm feeling like dizzy, unsteady. Finally, I decide I better let him know because something is the matter with me. All of a sudden, it clicks into my head, the bowl. I said, that doesn't have any alcohol in it, does it? And he nods his head, it does. That was the answer. A non-drinker had 4 drinks, and like I'm kind of, out of it. Good thing the hotel was on the premises, so driving wasn't an issue, which no one should ever drive when they drink enough. And that's a warning to anyone out there. Even though you can hold your liquor, you feel you can and so on. If you drink and get stopped by an officer and they test you and you're over the limit, you're in big, big legal trouble.
And that's a PSA.
Everyone be aware of that, please.
That's a PSA from Jack, a public service announcement saying, please don't drink and drive. And if he starts slurring or wobbling a little bit, folks, we know the truth that there is vodka in that orange juice he's drinking. So let me, Jack, get to who you think is better in your opinion. And this covers all sports. So I love getting your opinion on this stuff and your reasons for. So let's start with 2 of the greatest centers of all time, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Wilt Chamberlain. Who's better, Jack?
Oh, man, I'm going to say, I'll say Wilt Chamberlain because the numbers he put up are like crazy off the charts. I know people are going to say something, well, look who he played against. They weren't as good as the guys Kareem went up against, but just think 50 points a game to average. I don't
Yeah.
care who you're playing against. Let's say you have one night where you score 20 points. Now you have to score 60, 60, 60 the next 3 nights to get back to 50. And even then, Chamberlain played all but 13 minutes, I think, one season.
Yeah.
And I don't care what era you're in, even if you're walking fast up and down the court, the durability, to lead the league in scoring, assists, the whole thing. But what bothered me about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Mac, in some big spots, he did lag a little bit. He did get outplayed by Dave Cowens in the Game 7 when Jabbar was with the Bucks to decide who would win the NBA championship. Dave Cowens outplayed him Game 7, and Moses Malone got the better of him by far when the Sixers swept the Lakers in the playoffs. It's close, but I give a little edge to Chamberlain. But if you ask me this later, months from now, I could change my mind.
And you met Moses Malone, correct, Jack? Instead of Karl Malone.
Didn't I say Moses Malone?
No, you said Karl Malone, but
Moses Malone. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I thought that
Malone in the 1983 NBA Finals.
Yeah. Who's better, Jack? Dr. J or Kevin Durant?
Different era, different time. This is going to upset some people, but I'll say Kevin Durant. Dr. J was dazzling on the offensive end. There's no one like him. I mean, he went in the air better than anyone else. I'll throw a bone people's way and say Dr. J was better in the air than Michael Jordan. How do you like that? And that's saying a lot.
Yeah, it
he
is.
was better in the air than Air Jordan. But Dr. J wasn't the greatest defensive player. He didn't completely commit himself to defense. Kevin Durant was just a better defender, therefore a better all-around player.
Okay, you brought up Moses Malone. Patrick Ewing or Moses Malone? Jack, who's better?
At his best, Moses Malone. In all due respect to Patrick Ewing, Moses Malone, arguably at his very best, was the greatest center of all time, arguably, at his best. I mean, look what he did against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the 83 finals. I mean, he dominated Jabbar. The statistics may have looked a little bit close, not so dominant, but everyone could see he was basically manhandling Jabbar at times. And Moses Malone, maybe the most underrated NBA player of all time.
I'll agree with that. We'll turn to football real quick. Otto Graham or Johnny Unitas. Now, a lot of people don't talk about – a lot of people don't talk about Otto Graham, but in his 10-year career, he set a lot of records that people took years and years to break. So if you had to pick one for your team at their best, Jack, who would be better, Otto Graham or Johnny Unitas?
I'm not qualified to say. I never saw Otto Graham play. His feet were great, so on. I mean, that's not a reason in itself. I mean, I'll pick Babe Ruth over other players, never having seen him play.
Right.
But the master Johnny Unitas, he invented the 2-minute drill when the Colts beat the Giants in the 1958 NFL championship game. And Johnny Unitas was given the name the master. And I know when Johnny Unitas was playing during his prime, normally people would talk about past eras and make a comparison. And the consensus was that Johnny U was the greatest of all time. And so I'd go with Johnny U.
We mentioned this man a little earlier. Who was better, Jack? Dick Butkus or Mike Singletary?
That team that Mike Singletary was on, those Chicago Bear teams with Buddy Ryan's 46 defense and all. I mean, they were a well-oiled machine. Give me Dick Butkus, because Dick Butkus could take over a football game on his own. Now, I picked Ray Lewis as my greatest middle linebacker a little while ago. Dick Butkus probably would have been, second right behind him if we were doing it in an order of a few. Dick Butkus, I mean, most feared defensive player during his day.
Yeah.
I mean, the way he would, send Dick Butkus on a blitz after the quarterback, after the running back. He was fast. He was powerful. He was strong. Mike Singletary, great player, great leader, tremendously respected. I mean, the city, someone in Chicago should give the answer who's qualified because they both played for the Bears. No, seriously.
Right.
People, a lifelong Bear fan who saw, Dick Butkus play, of course they would have then seen Mike Singletary after him. I'd love to hear who, they would
pick. Yes. Ron Jaworski, the Polish Rifle, or Carson Wentz, Jack? Who's better?
You're joking, right? I mean,
Nope.
how can you put Carson Wentz on a better list? Here, come on, Mac. Next question.
Okay, Frank Gifford or Paul Hornung? A little tougher, Jack.
That's a little tougher, yeah. Frank Gifford was underrated. He's very good, better as a receiver than a runner, actually, catching passes out of the backfield. He was in the New York market. Hornung was in the Green Bay market, but Hornung, it's nicknamed the Golden Boy, great player coming out of Notre Dame. And Hornung was surrounded with a lot of great players. That's a tougher one. I would have to go with Paul Hornung.
Yes, Frank Gifford also was an all-pro defensive back, Jack. In their prime, Peyton Manning or Tom Brady, Jack? It's been asked by everybody. For a second you threw me off. I thought you were meaning Walter Payton, and I was going to say Peyton Manning, Tom Brady. In their prime, a lot of people have spoke on it. Yes.
This is one of those where Tom Brady, I would rate him ahead of Peyton Manning because he's had more of a longevity factor.
In their prime, Jack.
Okay?
In their prime.
In their prime, I'll give a tiny little edge to Peyton Manning. Tiny. Very tiny. It's interesting. Bill Belichick, after Peyton Manning retired, said Peyton Manning was the best quarterback he's ever coached against. He wasn't doing a Brady, Peyton Manning comparison, but he coached against Joe Montana. That's what made it kind of interesting. At Peyton's prime, a tiny little edge. Just one thing. Peyton Manning went to Super Bowls with four times with four different coaches. So never really given credit for that, and they won 2 of them.
Okay, now last question for you, Jack. Who was better, Ron Guidry or Louis Tiant?
Yeah, Mac, I don't know what's gotten into you. You're asking really good questions here. I mean, your questions are normally good. Don't get me wrong. They're normally always good. I'm not knocking them. But these are like tight ones. Again, are we talking peak value? 1978, the year that Ron Guidry went 25-3 and had a 1.74 ERA. Tiant was never that great, compared to the year Guidry had. But listen, El Tiante was charismatic. He was a Yankee too for a little while.
Yeah.
I'm going to give a tiny edge to Ron Guidry because at his best, Louisiana Lightning, his best was better than Louis Tiant's best.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would think that if you went over a period of time, you'd give the edge to Tiant.
Yeah.
At his best, Guidry ranks amongst the best of all time, especially in that 1 year. So we got our last debate topic here, Jack. And this is going to be a good one, I think, because there's a lot of different things involved in this debate. And, these are 2 of the greatest, probably all-around players in baseball history, easily. Barry Bonds, if you had to choose one player for your team, who would you choose? And I guess I go first on this one, Jack. I went with Ken Griffey Jr., Ken Griffey, of course, a 13-time All-Star, MVP, 10-time Golden Glove winner, 7-time Silver Slugger Award, 4-time American League home run leader, batting average of .284 with 2,781 hits, 630 home runs, 1,836 RBIs, an incredible center field defensively. One of the best swings in the history of baseball. Ken Griffey was always hustling, always playing hard. He's kind of an old school throwback to me. Some people will say that maybe he dogged it sometimes. I think that was because of injury. This is a player during the steroid era that didn't use PEDs, Jack. If without those injuries, he would have easily had 700 home runs, a lot more runs batted in. If I had to start a team on a playground, Jack, if I just had to pick two guys for my team, and I had to start a team on a playground, Barry Bonds, as great as he was, even before the steroids he was using, I would still give the edge to Ken Griffey Jr. I think he's, to me, probably in the top 10 baseball players in the history of baseball, Jack.
Mac, this is one debate that I might tank, actually. I mean, I'm going with Barry Bonds more because I have to than I want to, only because Barry Bonds has put up historical numbers. I mean, historical numbers. He's the all-time home run leader with 762, all-time single-season home run leader with 73. He has 232 walks in the season or record. He stole over 500 bases in his career. And listen, Barry Bonds has issues hanging over his head that Ken Griffey doesn't. Emotionally, I want to go with Ken Griffey Jr. Something about Ken Griffey Jr. bothers me. 630 homers during his career. He was so great, Ken Griffey Jr. Something sounds disappointing about that.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? Somehow Ken Griffey Jr. did it the right way. And I just feel, considering Barry Bonds was an MVP 7 times, he had 8 gold gloves to his credit. He went to the All-Star game 14 times to Griffey's 13. I kind of feel Barry Bonds at his best was the closest thing to Babe Ruth, if not even better at his very best, at his very peak. I'm talking about when all cylinders were running and Barry Bonds was the home run and RBI machine and the walk machine offensively. But I don't mind losing this argument because the truth of the matter is Ken Griffey did it from both sides of the plate. Barry Bonds, the first part of his career before he had the other issues that came into play, he was a tremendous defensive player and a great offensive player, just didn't hit a ton of home runs.
Right.
And that was why, things kind of turned for him. He made supposedly certain decisions that pick up his game for him to hit home runs or whatever. At least that's what the talk was. And I mean, Ken Griffey Jr. in his prime was so great. Now I'll give you an example. When he was with Seattle, A-Rod was with Seattle the time Ken Griffey was there. And they'd always ask Lou Piniella who's the better player, Ken Griffey or A-Rod. Piniella loved A-Rod as he did Ken Griffey, so he tried to avoid the issue, not to answer much, not to say much about it. But he would talk in terms as if Ken Griffey was better, but would never say it. And A-Rod finally said, look, there's no comparison. Griffey's better. The truth of the matter is the perception at the time was Griffey is clearly a level above A-Rod. And that's when A-Rod was, at his best.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I give a little edge to Barry Bonds because of all the historic things he did that hadn't been seen since the years of Babe Ruth. But if you tell me Ken Griffey Jr. is better, I'm not gonna argue.
Of course, the reason I give the edge to Ken Griffey is because of the steroid use, Jack. Listen, if Ken Griffey was juiced up as Barry Bonds was, he wouldn't have been taking time off from baseball during those years. Because of his injuries, he would have been right back on the field. Didn't
Barry
you?
Bonds didn't play such good defense during that time. He was an offensive machine. So
Right. So I mean,
can't argue. Ken Griffey,
you know,
Ken Griffey Jr. was better than Joe DiMaggio for a Willie Mays. You know, I mean, it's hard to argue against certain things. I'm
very
not saying
close.
he was, but it's hard to argue.
I mean, you know, we did talk about the greatest center fielders in, you know, New York, Boston, and Philly time. If you were going to say the greatest center field in history of baseball, you could definitely argue that Ken Griffey was in the top two, top three.
Let me tell you something, Mac. A lesson for all of us. Always treat everyone nice, because when Ken Griffey was a kid, Ken Griffey Jr., his dad played for the Yankees. He didn't like the way his dad was treated, and he wasn't allowed to be on the field where kids would be allowed in other stadiums. He didn't like the way the Yankees acted towards him when he was a kid. So now Ken Griffey has a chance to go over to the Yankees as a free agent. He didn't want to know from it. He didn't want anything to do with the Yankee organization. And
two other things that you just mentioned that they had in common, both of them had very good playing baseball fathers. Bobby Bonds, you know, and Ken Griffey Sr.
Who was better, Barry Bonds or Ken Griffey Sr.? That's a good question.
You mean Bobby Bonds? Bobby Bonds, the fathers, right?
Bonds, the father. Bobby Bonds wasn't as consistently good as Ken Griffey Sr., but no less an authority than Tom Seaver said at one point that Bobby Bonds is the best player in the National League.
Yeah, he definitely did say that, because Bobby Bonds did have some unbelievable seasons, as Ken Griffey did also. So, I mean, that's another thing in common about him. So, Jack, we're going to get ready to get out of here. We'll tell people about our upcoming show tomorrow, which is a lot of fun for us. We have our big football show on Sunday, where we have Anthony Servino from Football Fantasy Face-Off. He's a great guest. He comes out and gives you your best plays for fantasy. He also breaks down the three biggest games with us, which is always fun. We also have on Robert Butler from Sports Scope. That's with a K. He has his own show. Very good with his opinions. We kind of talk to him about topics around all sports, really. So he's pretty knowledgeable in all sports. So they'll be on tomorrow. We'll go through all our picks. We'll definitely take a look at the locals. The Giants have a bye week, but the rest of them are up and playing. So we'll talk and touch about them and cover them in depth. And that's about it for today's show, Jack. You all join us tomorrow, 8 to 10 a.m. as we do our big football show. Excuse me?
I'll tell you Ken Griffey's senior story. Do we have a few seconds?
Yeah, go right ahead, Jack. Go right ahead.
Ken Griffey Sr. was a part of the Big Red Machine, the championship team's a right fielder. He went down to the last game of the season ahead of Bill Matlack of the Cubs for the batting title. And Sparky Anderson and the others sat down with Ken Griffey Sr. to want to have him, give him the best chance to win the batting title. He sat the game out. Bill Matlack went 4 for 4 for the Cubs and won the batting title.
Wow. That's a principled man there, Jack. I got to like that. You know what I mean? So, again, folks, join us tomorrow, 8 to 10 a.m. on our big football show with our two guests, Anthony Servino from Fantasy Football and Robert Butler with his opinions and insight on sports in general. We'll be covering topics. You all have a great Saturday. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll see you back here tomorrow. Take care, and we'll see you tomorrow, folks.